Good morning. My name is Barbara Fuller, and as chair of the board, I welcome you to this virtual November 16th, 2021 working session of the Washtenaw County Board of Road Commissioners. Our communications manager, Emily Kaiser, will describe how our virtual meetings operate, how to access the agenda, and how people may participate remotely. Emily.
Thanks, Commissioner. So if you would like to make public comment during the public comment portion of the meeting, we will provide instructions and prompt you at the appropriate time in the agenda to virtually raise your hand. This can be done through your computer or touch-tone phone. The chat feature on this Zoom meeting is available only as technical support for users on their computer or smartphone. If you are experiencing technical issues with audio or video during the meeting, please submit a comment in the chat feature and I will help you troubleshoot. If you're a member of the staff or road commissioner, please contact the IT help desk directly if you're having issues and they can help you during the meeting. The audio and video of this meeting is being recorded. A link to the video will be posted to wcroads.org in the coming days. Today's meeting agenda is also posted to wcroads.org, and there's a link available in the chat if you're joining us from your computer. Thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you, Emily. I now call this meeting to order and ask if Aaron would please call the roll.
Chair Barb Fuller.
Present, participating remotely from Scioto Township, Washtenaw County, Michigan.
Vice Chair Rod Green.
Good morning. I'm present and participating from Superior Township, Washtenaw County, Michigan.
Commissioner Doug Fuller.
Present and participating remotely from Scioto Township in the county of Washtenaw.
Commissioner Gloria Yamas.
Good morning. I am participating virtually from Pittsfield Township, Washtenaw County, Michigan.
Commissioner Joanne McCullum.
Good morning. I'm participating remotely from Ypsilanti Township in Washtenaw County.
Managing Director Cheryl Siddle.
Present.
Director of Engineering Matt McDonald.
Present.
Director of Operations Jim Harmon.
Present.
And Director of Finance and IT Dan Ackerman.
Here.
Thank you, Aaron. We now move into public participation. Do you have anything further you want to say on that point, Emily?
This is the point in the meeting where we'd ask people to virtually raise their hand. At this time, we don't have any members of the public outside of Commissioner Sanders here. So I can read through the instructions if you want me to, but this would be the time that people could virtually raise their hand if they were interested in making public comment.
Okay, I think the folks on the meeting call understand how to do that. Does Commissioner Sanders have anything she'd like to share with us during this part of the agenda?
I can ask her to unmute. Let's see.
Good morning. No, I don't have anything to add. I just want to say it was good to see Commissioner Fuller this past weekend at one of the county's equity discussions in the community. And I think the community was glad to see her as well. So that was important. And thank you for coming.
You are welcome. I enjoyed it immensely. All right. Nobody else with a hand raised? Yes, Emily?
No one else with a hand raised. That is correct.
All right. At this point, I'm going to hand the working session over to our managing director to guide us through these agenda items. Cheryl.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Well, it's that time of year again where we take a look back at the past year. I think we always say it's amazing how fast the time has gone, but here we are. Looking back at 2021 and Dan and really all of his staff, as well as all the directors, and certainly with Emily's guidance with respect to the presentation, it's a collaborative effort. I appreciate that Dan, kind of gathers us all together. Each person is responsible for their individual areas, but Dan's under the, overall guidance of what Dan's able to provide. So I will have him walk us through 2021. We'll take a short break and then we'll take a look at what staff is proposing for 2022. So with that, I'm happy to hand it over to Dan.
Thank you, Cheryl. And just want to echo what you said as far as this being a team effort. Really appreciate Jim and his staff, Matt and his staff, and Cheryl as well. We've had several meetings. Usually those meetings require homework on all of our parts. And it's nice because, you know, Jim and Matt and Cheryl kind of look at the budget a little differently than I do. And a lot of times we come to the same conclusion. And if we don't, then, you know, we can have a nice, healthy discussion about it. You know, certainly there are many competing needs of the agency, you know, and there's only so much funds available. So we had some discussions about that, and they were very thoughtful. And, you know, I think healthy discussions to have for the organization. I also wanted to give big kudos to Emily. She had the vision as far as the format change. As she mentioned earlier, this is the first time the year-end budget is in this format. So we've made it through the whole budget cycle in the new format. And we've been doing this for, you know, all of 2021. And yet we still are finding ways to be more efficient with it, because there's a lot of charts and, you know, just a lot of information in there. But we found some ways, you know, even we've been doing this for a year now, to be even more efficient with it. And so, you know, I just appreciate the collaborative effort with Emily. And, you know, she's just really good to work with and has a lot of great ideas and is very patient too when she's waiting for information. So I just definitely want to give her a lot of kudos with this great budget document. And I also, commissioners, if you have questions, feel free to ask at any time. Hopefully this can be a dialogue, and you know, the goal is, of course, for you to have a good understanding and be comfortable with everything we're presenting today. I'll do my best to try and notice when you raise your hand, but if someone's hand is raised for a while and I'm not acknowledging you, you know, feel free to say something, or staff can also bring that to my attention. So with that, Emily, if we can go to the next slide. So we're going to start with our 2021 year-end budget. Next slide. So overall, things seemed more stable than anticipated. You can certainly see in the adjustments we made, the adjustment sheet that we have, I believe it's page 4. We adjusted from the second quarter. So those were the numbers that we were using. Wasn't sure how much additional adjustments we had to make, but really, you know, things, you know, there were some adjustments made, but overall it wasn't significant at all. You know, we still are dealing with the pandemic. Unfortunately, I'm getting tired of talking about it. I'm sure all of you are getting tired of talking about it too, but it still seems to be there and potentially impactful. So certainly we're mindful of that. Fortunately, in 2021, as you saw with the Michigan Transportation Funds, they rebounded a little bit from 2020, but you know, there hasn't been a significant impact on that, and we weren't sure. You know, you're talking about, you know, oh, there's a new wave coming or whatever the case may be, but really has not had a significant impact on Michigan Transportation Funds, which is great. Also, despite all the challenges, we were able to complete majority of the projects we had. We had a fairly robust year again with our construction projects. And so between that and Millage and so on, we were able to complete a majority of those. And also we did kind of get back to normal, whatever normal is now. We were able to reopen our lobby and allow our customers to have direct access to staff. So a bit of a change. Certainly the board meetings have been virtual, and obviously we're looking at some sort of hybrid in the new year, which, you know, again, you know, I guess baby steps to kind of getting back to business as usual. Okay, next slide. So our year-end budget adjustment is an additional $343,000 decrease to our fund balance, which would leave us with deficit spending of $5.3 million. Sorry, my screen's kind of in the way here. And our fund balance would be about $15.7 million, which is approximately 19% of expenditures. If you recall, Plant Moran gave us a target of $15 being the lower end, and 20 to 25 being the upper end. So, we're in a really good spot here. I probably will say this several times. We feel our numbers are conservative, not ultra conservative, but conservative, meaning that the deficit spending of 5.3, I'm fully convinced that we can gain, at least a portion of that back, maybe even half of that back or more. But what is winter going to do? What is the Michigan Transportation Funds going to do the last 3 months? There are still a lot of unknowns at this point. Will we have additional carryover? So conservatively too, with our projects and our equipment purchases and so on, we have conversations of, well, is it feasible that a project will be finished in 2021? Yes, but more than likely it'll be carried over. And I say, well, we probably should budget for it in 2021 because that's the conservative way, and then we can just carry it over. So, some of that is built into the budget as well. Next slide. So Michigan Transportation Funds, certainly we share with you every month. They're up, they're down. Ultimately they have been up a little bit and close to the estimates that we received from MDOT. So, but we are adding about 250,000 to where we last thought the anticipated Michigan Transportation Funds would be. And again, we feel that the MTF will come in slightly above this. So we feel this is a bit conservative, but again, it's always easier to add to the budget than subtract. And as far as federal state projects, we needed to increase the revenues by about 471,000. Several projects progressed a little more rapidly. And again, US 12 is one of those projects. That's a $6 million project. So are we going to receive 6 million in revenues, or 6.5, or 5.5? So, just that one project can cause a big swing in the budget. Barb, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Dan.
Yep.
I'm looking at page 5 of the budget report, and Q2 update says MTF is increased by 750,000, but you said 250.
Right.
Help me follow, please.
Yeah. So I'm referring to, Barb, is from the second quarter. So we already made that $750,000 adjustment. So basically the second quarter was at 32 million. We're projecting 32,250. So that's where the 250,000 comes from. Is that good enough? Okay, great. And so along with the additional revenues from the federal state projects, from those projects that were progressing more rapidly, you'll also see a corresponding increase in expenditures because, again, more work is being accomplished than we had budgeted early on. Commissioner Yamas, you have a question?
I do, but I just found it because I'm following along also on the proposed budget. The 471 is in the proposed revisions, correct?
Correct, yes.
Anticipated proposed revisions. Okay.
Yeah, page 4, you'll see all of these adjustments that we're talking about.
I do see that, and that's where I'm following this along. Okay, thank you.
Yep, sure. Any other questions on this slide? Okay, next slide, Emily. So state trunk line, we're actually budgeting an increase of 885,000, which is of course significant. We had used a more traditional budget number from the state of Michigan. So this budget year, and just a reminder, their fiscal year is October through September, so a little bit different than ours. A lot of times there's a delay in receiving a budget from them. So we use the more traditional budget numbers. They were able to actually increase that. And quite frankly, we probably could have increased it in the first and second quarter, but we didn't. So that's why we have a significant increase of 885,000, which certainly is a good thing. And you'll see in 2022, I've adjusted the initial budget number for state trunk line to be closer to what we have right now. Quite frankly, we don't know because we still have not received a budget from MDOT, which is a whole other issue. But I did make sure to adjust the 2022 initial budget to be closer to what we're anticipating for this year, if that makes sense. Okay, next slide. As far as township contributions, we're anticipating a little bit less revenues from township agreements. If you recall, we did increase that significantly. Sometimes we can accomplish the projects at a lower cost, which means we would need less from the townships. And there could be some timing issues too, but so we're decreasing that by 475,000. And I think that's a conservative number. So we'll see ultimately what those final numbers are. But as of now, I'm decreasing that a little bit. And it also, as far as Barb, you have a question?
No, go ahead, finish.
Okay. We also have some township contribution projects that we're carrying over into 2022. And I believe those were a couple of signal projects. Laura Road at Textile and Maple Road at Textile. Those are going to be carried over into 2022. So obviously, we carry the budget over there too. Commissioner Barb Fuller.
Thanks, Dan. Again, I'm struggling to reconcile your PowerPoint with what I'm seeing in this document. On page 8 of the report, the budgeted amount for the township contributions is $1 million more than the anticipated revenue, right? So I'm confused.
So really you want to focus on page 4. Yep, so page 4, you can see we had township contributions. This is as of the second quarter was about 8.6. We're anticipating 7.6, so we're reducing that by 968,000. And that's kind of what I'm speaking to. And it was a combination of the township agreements are coming in a little bit less than we anticipate, and then some carryover projects.
Okay, so
on page 8, if I may, also on page 8, where I believe that Commissioner Fuller was looking at that first line, township matching drainage, our budget was 5.5 million. Through the end of October, our actual revenue was only 4.1, but we expect by the end of the year to be at 5, just slightly over 5 million. So that's where the 475 difference comes into play. Does that make sense?
it will. I'll have to absorb that.
And Commissioner Barb Fuller, this is great feedback. If there's ways that we maybe need to tweak the overall document, let us know. Because again, the goal is to inform the board and make it less confusing, hopefully. So if we're adding to confusion, let us know. And like I said, I feel like this document is a continuous improvement. We're not necessarily set in our ways as far as how it's presented. So if there's ways we can make it more clear, we can talk about that for sure.
Okay, and why do you believe the township contributions decreased?
So again, sometimes we have estimates of what we think the job's going to cost. And, our operations departments can find ways to be very efficient and come in under the estimates. And so therefore, then the townships would be paying us less because the job itself came in less.
So it's not that they reined in what they were going to spend.
No.
It's
Nope.
that operations did a great job of economizing.
Yep,
Okay.
that contributes to it. There could be some projects maybe that, didn't end up happening. And Jim certainly could speak to all of this, but, that's kind of typical. They find ways to be efficient, like, hey, let's
Okay.
do a couple of these projects in tandem and maybe save some cost as far as hauling or whatever, wherever we can eke out some savings. And then obviously then the townships would be benefactors of that.
Sure. Impressive that almost $1 million was conserved.
Well, it was the 475. And then, like I said, the other, at least 300,000 is the carryover of some of the signal projects. Jim, is there anything you would like to add as far as the township agreements, or have we covered it okay?
Commissioners, we certainly take that partnership, as we do all our partnerships, very seriously. The townships are a critical element to our local road improvement, and even our primary road improvement program each year. To your point, Barb, just draw your attention to this afternoon's agenda, and there is a revised agreement with Lodi Township where the township, based on cost and consultation with the road commission staff, did cancel a specific project for this year and intending to do that next year. So it's not a carryover in the sense that Dan's describing, but simply a reduction in their program with us. So that would be an example of cutting that from the program and a reduction in costs. And the rest is, as Dan described, it's efficiency. Our estimates are based largely on time and materials. And if we can do things more efficiently, more quickly, that reduces the labor costs and the equipment costs, and that's a savings to both agencies. We still get the scope of work done, but it can result in a cumulative savings impact, and you're seeing that reflected here on the slide.
Great, thanks, Jim. And Commissioner Barb, to also put in perspective, we're anticipating a little over $5 million for our township agreement program. The initial budget for that, or the initial amount we were expecting, was about 1.5. So we went from 1.5 to over 5 million. So that just shows you the tremendous growth that we have, and we've been very successful in partnering with our township through the years to convince them to invest in the local roads. So Commissioner Yamas, you had a question?
Yeah, so I'm following along on page 4
Yep.
on the proposed budget revision. And so you talk about a decrease of 475 for the township contributions. And I see the proposed revision of 968. So the 475, I don't see that number.
So the 475 is just for the township agreements, but then we have another 300,000 for those signal projects that are also township contributions. So there's several things that comprise the 968.
Okay.
And Emily, if you want to go to that page, yeah, right there. So you can see there. So the 475 is that top line item where it says township matching / drainage. And if you look further down, Lower Road at Textile, there's 145,000. Maple at Textile is 155. And Hitchingham Road. So if we combined all those, that equals that adjustment you're seeing on page 4. So does that,
thank you.
Does that clear it up? Or?
Yes, that clears it up. Thank you.
Okay, great. Commissioner Barb Fuller.
I'd just like the record to show that we've been joined by the Chair of the Board of Commissioners, Commissioner Sue Schenk.
Okay, great. Okay, any other questions on this category? Okay, so we'll move on to the next slide. So as far as expenditures for our reimbursable road projects, again, mentioning our federal aid projects in particular, that more work was accomplished than budgeted. So there, we increased the revenues and we have a corresponding increase to the expenditures as well. Next slide. Looking at our departmental budget for operations, the actual wage costs were trending lower than budgeted, and certainly we've been sharing with you all year the challenges as far as finding employees, especially as far as drivers are concerned. And so we budgeted for a certain number of full-time equivalent employees, and certainly that wasn't the case. And this is probably not a shock to any of you. So therefore, the actual wages are coming in, fairly significantly lower than we had budgeted for our operations department in particular. Commissioner Barb Fuller.
Page 10, miscellaneous income. Sorry, Dan, if I wasn't keeping up with you. I'm looking at the other line on page 10, budgeted 120. Anticipated revenue of 303.
Yep.
Where did that come from?
So a lot of that is from, again, the operations department, and they've been very successful with our online auctions. Certainly we are buying, at least 4 heavy trucks a year, and we've definitely been investing a lot more in our road equipment. And also that gives us that extra capacity if something is beyond the useful life for us. So I want to say, Jim, it's well over 200,000 that we've received from auction proceeds this year. And Jim has his hand raised, so I'll turn it over to him.
That's correct. We estimated revenue from auctioning equipment in the amount of 132,000, and our online auctions to date have realized over 216,000 salvage value through those auctions. So that's a big part of that line item that you mentioned on page 10.
Yep. So certainly is a good thing, and I my eyes got wide when I was seeing some of the proceeds coming in the form of checks for our auctions. So, quite impressive. And I think it continues to be a successful way to get the most bang for your buck as far as, our road equipment, the online auctions. We reach a large audience. The fees aren't, outrageous. So, I think that seems to be working really well.
We just sold a used signal truck that we certainly got our value out of to an outfit in Alaska. So they purchased it on Gov Deals, picked it up, trailered it to, or drove it to Montana, and then put it on a trailer for the rest of the trip. So it is truly a broad audience, a big market. And there's a lot of hunger in used equipment right now across the country.
Okay, any other questions on that? Okay, Emily, if we can go back to the presentation. As far as non-departmental, Doug and the board of McChrysip were successful in getting us another refund for our liability insurance. We knew one was coming at the second quarter, but conservatively, we wanted to know what that dollar amount was. And let me just pull that up just to remind everybody. It was about $240,000 that we received in a refund for our liability insurance costs. So we want to certainly recognize that, and obviously, those costs are coming in lower than budgeted. Okay, next slide. And really, that's all as far as 2021. So again, a reminder. While the numbers don't, they're not a embellished number, it is closer to like a worst case scenario as far as our budget. And again, conservatively, you want to overestimate your expenditures, underestimate your revenues. So then, the goal is your bottom line should come in a little bit better. I don't feel that we are ultra conservative. I feel like the numbers do mean something, but yet, things could happen, right? I mean, winter's been kind to us so far, but we have no idea what's going to happen in the next month or so. And we want to make sure we have a budget to be able to accomplish everything we want to. So that's just one example. Michigan transportation funds, I fully expect them to be a little higher, but again, with all the fluctuations, we don't know. So we use the knowns and then we budget for that. So any other questions on year-end 2021? Okay, I don't know. I think we have a break scheduled next, or if we just want to continue. Commissioner Green?
Yes, you indicated in your report that the MTF funds were tied to an index inflation.
You're getting a little ahead of me. We're going to talk about that for 2022.
Okay, that's fine.
Is that okay if I wait till, because we'll have a discussion about that and a couple other factors with MTF.
Please. All right, thank you.
Commissioner McCollum?
Yes, I just wanted to mention, I like the formula that you use to keep on top of the budget and to be fiscally responsible for taxpayers' money. So I think I like that. That's how I like budgets.
Yep, and that certainly is the goal. Obviously, we want to accomplish our mission, improving the roads, investing in our infrastructure, investing in our employees. but you also need to have a fund balance because you never know, a pandemic could happen, a tornado could happen, like what happened in 2012. You again, fiscally responsible. I like that because we want to be prepared for anything that may come our way as well. So Commissioner Barb Fuller.
Thank you, Dan. I do know we have a break schedule, but we're running ahead of ourselves a little bit. And I'm going to take a point of personal privilege. Commissioner Schenk will need to leave before we're finished with this session. And I just wanted to give her an opportunity to say hello and share any thoughts. Commissioner Sanders weighed in at the beginning during public comment, but Sue, if you'd like to say a few words, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I've been away because I was working as part of the work group for the Governor's Council on Climate Solutions, one of hundreds of people across the state trying to work together to come up with some solutions to climate change that we could implement in Michigan now. So I'm really glad to be back. And I don't really have anything to update with right now. I'm more in listening mode, and I appreciate being here. I think I talked to Director Siddall yesterday, and we talked about the fact that we probably won't be able to continue meeting completely virtually after the first of the year. But other than that, I don't really have any updates. And so thanks.
You are most welcome. Cheryl, back to you.
All right. Well, I guess given that we are running ahead of schedule, are we comfortable just continuing to move through the presentation? Or do we want to take a break?
I'm going to say let's keep moving and see where we end up with the 2022 conversation.
All right. And thank you for the thumbs up there, Commissioner McCollum. I appreciate all the head nodding and thumbs up definitely help. All right. Well, I don't have much to add. This is Dan's show, so we'll let him get started with 2022.
All right. So moving on to 2022. So as far as the summary is concerned, the financial position does look positive. We do have some deficit spending program for 2022 of about $4.7 million, which would leave us with projected fund balance of $11 million, which is 14% of expenditures. So again, Plant Moran basically used the floor of 15%, between 15 to 20 to 25%. Now this is below the 15%, but I'm not concerned again because of all the things that I shared as far as 2021 with our conservative numbers. I still feel like there's enough fund balance there if there were emergencies or any other needs to come up. And also in 2022, potentially, if we had to be creative with some of our projects, if we have to look at our equipment spending, there is some flexibility there. If say, winter is horrible in the first quarter, whatever challenges come our way, we can make some adjustments. So that's why I feel pretty comfortable with and I believe staff would also agree with the projected fund balance for 2022. Okay, next slide. Okay, Commissioner Green, here's I think what you were bringing up. So Michigan Transportation Funds, we're expecting that to increase to about 33 million. Again, somewhat conservative number, but it's really a crapshoot from month to month. And we took the estimate that we received from MDOT. If you recall, we shared. They looked at the formula a few times through the course of 2021, and also looked at the out years 22 and 23 at least. And the most recent estimate was about 33 million. We did hear that the 2020 census will be included with our numbers going forward. And certainly Washtenaw County has seen an increase in our population. So we were debating what sort of impact would that be? And so I have a contact at the state of Michigan, and she's actually one of the ones that divvies out the Michigan Transportation Funds every month. So certainly go right to the source. And she said, based on how the formula works, there's a minimal impact for counties. Apparently cities and villages, there's a more significant impact She was actually going into the weeds a little bit much for me. I know how the formula works, but she was kind of going into the weeds a little more for me. But the population adjustments have a minimal impact on counties as far as how the Michigan Transportation Funds are distributed. And certainly we do expect, even a minimal impact to be positive, but we don't know what that will be. And certainly, obviously we watch Michigan Transportation Funds very closely every month and we'll continue to adjust accordingly. And it's also the first year there's an inflationary increase for fuel tax. And the new rate is 27.2 cents. And again, these are all positives, but as of now, we are not sure that it'll have a significant impact. But, as I say, we'll keep monitoring it. I know the state of Michigan, usually around February, will have revised estimates of MTF. So that will be really telling to see how much they increase what we're anticipating. And then obviously we would look towards that to change our budget, around the first quarter. But again, 33 million, it is an increase from this year. But I do feel it's conservative and I do anticipate, assuming there's no other factors influencing things, that we should hopefully be able to adjust the budget for that. So any questions? And Commissioner Green, I don't know if that answered all your questions.
Well, it did. My assumption was that the tying it to inflation would impact it more, but it looks like it's going to be minimal impact.
Yeah, as of what we know now, and like I said, the key indicator for me is, receiving those estimates from the state of Michigan, because they're looking at it very closely. And if they feel that there's an even greater impact, then we will adjust our budget accordingly. But just kind of keeping that conservative approach with all the knowns right now, 33 million, which is still an increase from 2021. We just felt that was, our best guess for our initial stab for 2022.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this? Because I know Michigan Transportation Fund's obviously very important to this agency. Okay, we can go to the next slide then. Oh, Commissioner Barb Fuller.
If this is the appropriate place, we have an obligation to spend a certain percentage with respect to complete streets. Do I remember that correctly?
Are you talking about for the non-motorized?
Yes.
Portion, 1% of MTF? Yes. Yep, we have that budgeted this year as well as last year. Brent Schlack in engineering is monitoring that and is trying to formalize that, so we make sure that we don't fall short on that. And I believe we have 500,000 programmed for 2022. And the challenge with that, Commissioner Barb Fuller, is our engineering department is very good at getting contracts with other agencies and getting some of that work reimbursed. And so the challenge is to we need to spend Michigan Transportation Fund dollars per the law on that. So that's been a challenge, but we've been able to formalize that through the course of the last few years, and we're doing a much better job making sure that we're budgeting for it.
Okay.
So Commissioner Yamas.
So I was on the legislative update last Friday. There was a link to the county revenue data. Is that where some of this money came from? Because I wondered how that was going to apply to us. And I saw that Washtenaw County ranked number 5, but I also saw the increase in the population. And,
yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe that's where that's coming from. And those numbers then get plugged into the Michigan Transportation Fund formula.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Jim?
Dan, to Commissioner Barb Fuller's inquiry about the non-motorized, in the winter, Brent will reach out to the operations department in order to identify our contribution toward non-motorized, specifically any of the American Disabilities Act sidewalk ramp upgrades that we may be involved in. And recall that as part of our local road program, the Road Commission, this board is contributing a sizable amount of MTF from our primary road fund to help provide incentive for the local road program. So we also take that into account and break those costs out And that's added to the investments that our engineering department, Brent Schlack and his team are making. So it can tend to be fairly sizable when all of those things are computed.
And certainly that's a moving target. So we make sure as our MTF moves that we have enough budgeted in expenditures to meet that obligation. Commissioner Yamas, you have a question?
No, that was just clapping to what
Oh.
we're doing for that.
Oh, that's clapping.
I'm
Sorry.
happy about that. That's okay.
Yes. Okay. Okay, anything else on this slide? Okay, Emily, let's go on to the next one. So our federal and state aid program, in 2021, as I mentioned, when we talked about year-end 2021, we had some projects, in particular US 12 project and Dixboro Road. Those were, you know, a little bit unusual projects, especially US 12. That was a $6 million project. And obviously we're hoping to complete that in 2022. So, but when you take $6 million out, then it's going to, the federal funding dollars are returning to more traditional levels, but it is showing a decrease from the previous year. Again, that US 12 project kind of, I guess you could say, inflates maybe what we're anticipating as far as federal aid. So hopefully that made sense. Next slide. So Township Contributions, we had a lot of discussion about that, and so the Road Commission contributes to our matching program, and has traditionally been about 1.3 million. We decided to increase that to 1.5 to again encourage our townships to you know, partner with us, and it's been a great program. We also used to break down the matching program into more traditional, and then, or I guess we call it conventional, and a drainage match. We decided, rather than keeping a portion in the drainage program, let's put it all into the conventional to provide more opportunities to the townships to partner with us if there are no drainage needs. And so, you know, like I said, we had a lot of discussion about this and felt good that let's make a few changes here and you know, just see what impact that has on the township matching program. Commissioner Green?
Okay, so I recognize that it's pure speculation, but what might the impact be of new infrastructure bill that was passed and signed by the president?
Commissioner Green, you have a crystal ball or something? We're going to talk about that in a moment, if you don't mind.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, that's something that we have a little bit further, a couple slides away. So if you don't mind, we'll address that then. Okay, Cheryl, you had a question or your hand raised?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that we will be bringing the local road matching program to the board for a formal approval. But obviously it's something that we wanted to make sure was included as part of the budget discussion as well. And certainly, as Dan indicated, staff's recommendation is going to be to both increase that program from the overall total of 1.3 up to 1.5 million, and then to simplify the program so that it'll all be considered what we would typically call our conventional match, as opposed to breaking it up between conventional and drainage. But the board will see that again. We will be asking you to take action on that in the future.
And as we talked about in 2021, in the second quarter, Jim and his team will have had an opportunity to meet with all 20 townships. They'll have agreements in place. And the second quarter is usually when we adjust it. And keep in mind, just the revenue portion from the townships went from, you know, 1.5 or 1.3 to over $5 million. So, you know, and that's been the pattern here for, you know, almost as long as I can remember. So certainly has been a very successful initiative, and, you know, the townships believe in what we're doing and are willing to invest their precious dollars in a more robust township agreement program. But like I said, that would be in the second quarter that we'd make that adjustment. Mr. Bartfuller?
I would like to point out that the team here has done an exceptional job in terms of helping the townships trust and believe that if they invest their dollars, that we'll do what we said we were going to do with them. Many of them have millages that they have had for years. Some may be new, but it's a real tribute to the team here that the townships are willing to trust us enough to put more of their money in and have those ongoing conversations. So kudos to you folks for building and strengthening the relationships with the township leaders.
Mhm. No, I agree. And, you know, part of me thinks maybe our initial budget for the township matching program should increase because it always does each year. But again, this is just the conservative approach to use, you know, the starting point, and then we obviously we do adjust it. But you know, I don't know. Maybe in the future we should consider maybe changing that. But we'll see. Maybe I'm being ultra conservative on this because you know Jim and the operations department does a great job getting significantly more investments. So maybe that's something we'll consider for next year. Any other questions on this slide? Okay, we'll move on then. Other contributions, of course, we have the county road millage. We expect about $4.2 million next year, which is great. We also have a nice partnership with County Parks and Rec, and that's our border-to-border projects, segments D3 and D4. And we're expecting about $2.9 million from the Washtenaw County Parks, so that'll be great. Any questions on that? Next slide. So one of my favorites, we're going to have a road commission administered special assessment district. At least that's in the works for 2022, York Timber Ridge. And assuming it makes it through all the processes, there's petitions, and maybe it has already, I don't know. But assuming it makes it all the way to the finish line, then this agency, we would sell bonds to pay for the construction piece. And then we would, the residents have an opportunity to pay off what their particular assessment is, or it's on their winter tax rolls for a period of 10 years that we administer that. So, so obviously that's going to increase the miscellaneous income category. And for this, it's about $790,000. We do have installment purchases for 4 heavy trucks for next year, which is about $960,000. If you recall, this year we had the 4 heavy trucks, but we just used our reserves, and those reserves were built up from the state of Michigan adjustments, their audit adjustments. We've been getting some nice audit adjustments from them, and so we felt the reserves were built up to the point we could pay for it with cash, which is great. We do have more than 4 heavy trucks that we are purchasing in 2022, and if this is one area, if our bottom line is being impacted even more dramatically than we think, we could always do installment purchases for 8 heavy trucks, which would certainly help our bottom line. You know, I'm not a big fan of having to finance things if we don't have to, but that is, again, if we get into a situation where, you know, maybe our bottom line we're kind of struggling with, and it's getting more difficult to justify the deficit spending, whatever that may be, then we could always, you know, do installment purchases for another 4 trucks, for instance. Commissioner McCollum?
Yes, I know you, Dan, went over this before about the installment purchase. Could you go over it a little bit more about what that means, or what you're doing with that?
You know, it's just a form of financing that's been very beneficial to the agency. You don't have all the cost if you actually issue bonds. There's a lot more costs associated with, you know, where you need to publish things. You're required to get a financial advisor with that. Plus, the thing I don't like, it works against you as far as your bond ratings. The Road Commission has been AAA rated for, you know, several years now, which I'm very proud of. We should all be very proud of. That's the highest rating you can have. But if you issue bonds, you know, you'll have higher upfront costs. It'll work against you as far as your debt to equity ratio. So we've been using installment purchases. We've actually been partnering with local banks. So that's been a nice initiative. Actually, Chelsea State Bank has received the last several low bids on the installment purchases. So it is a form of financing, but it's not quite like bonding, and has worked well. We still have received competitive interest rates. Obviously, we want to make sure, you know, the market supports low interest rates, and you know, has just been a really good way to finance these heavy trucks if we didn't feel we could pay for everything using cash. Does that
Dan,
that
those are
help, or-
typically 10 years in duration.
what's that?
What's the typical duration of the installment purchases?
5 years. So we pay those back within 5 years. We do, I believe, have the opportunity to pay things off early if we want to. But again, our interest rates have been pretty reasonable, so there really hasn't seemed a need for that.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think I got it now.
Okay, great. Yep, and we can always talk about this at a later date if you ever think of any other questions related to it. So, okay, anything else on this slide? Okay, we'll go to the next one then. Okay, and again, talking about 2022, you know, our operations department, we're continuing to try to recruit heavy truck drivers, and we want to fill all of our vacancies. I had a meeting yesterday with 2 new drivers, and you know, our kudos to our HR department. They are finding creative ways to find workers. I mean, it's tough out there. It's, you know, you probably talk to anybody at any business, and you know, just not just truck drivers even. I'm not sure what's going on with the labor market. It's really weird, but you know, there seems to be a shortage of workers, and you know, not sure everything that's contributing to it. And in particular, you know, our professional truck drivers has been, you know, a heck of a challenge. But like I said, I met with two new drivers yesterday. They seem great and anxious to work for us, and really appreciative of the opportunity. I always ask, well, what brings you to the road commission? And they said, you know, stability. You know, the road commission provides a nice work-life balance. You know, if somebody's driving truck, you know, for a private sector, and they're driving cross country, and they're, you know, gone from their families for weeks at a time or months, or let's say it's a seasonal job, and so they're gone all summer, and then in the wintertime there's not any work. So they like the stability we offer, and you know, just the quality of life we bring. And we also, you know, we pay a competitive wage. We have great benefits. So you know, that I continue to hear those reasons, and we're doing the best we can to promote that to, you know, potential new hires for the agency. And like I said, I think HR is doing a great job. You know, any channel that's available to try and find you know, great employees that they're out there looking. And as far as the administration is concerned, we are adding an FTE for a safety training coordinator. Cheryl, I don't know if you wanted to add anything about that.
Sure, I'd be happy to jump in. This again is something else that will be coming before the board for formal approval in the future. But as looking ahead, trying to determine, you know, how we're doing business and are there ways that we can do things differently or better. We have been fortunate over the last year that we've had a couple of incidences that have not resulted in injury. But when you look at our safety practices and just the general state of the motoring public also that is out there and continuing to get more and more aggressive, we have a safety committee. And I think that the safety committee does a great job. I think that we preach safety as much as possible, and we have a culture of trying to make it everybody's business to perform in a safe manner, which I absolutely support. But one problem with safety as a committee is that no one's truly taking the lead with respect to that. And so as we're looking at, you know, how we're doing that, I really think that our organization would benefit from having a safety coordinator that can take the lead on how we are currently doing business. Are there better ways of doing business? Going out and doing safety audits, whether they're in the field, doesn't matter whether it's our engineering construction staff, it's our operations staff, even just, you know, looking at our facilities, working closely with our loss prevention through MCRISP. So I just think that there's opportunities to better enhance how we are doing business to keep this very precious resource, our workforce, in good operational condition and obviously safe and going home at the end of the day. The other piece of that is we're looking at, trying to where we could improve ourselves and how we're doing business is listening to our folks as we're bringing these newer people on board. There's absolutely a need for training. And again, that's another thing that has fallen to each one of the individual staff and to the foreman, and it certainly will continue. It's always, any of us as a supervisor recognize that is our job. To provide that training, but to have somebody who can also take an overall approach to the organization to really make sure that all the resources that are available are being utilized, that that our staff are getting fully trained, that we're taking advantage of all opportunities, that we're consistent on how we're providing those training opportunities to our staff, and then being able to certify our staff to ensure that the training that they are receiving, that it's actually working. So all of that is trying to enhance the culture that we have in place, but I really think that is a position where in the long run, hopefully we can see that as we bring things like our mod factor down, which would reflect an increase in the safety culture that we have as an organization. And again, listening to our employees and trying to work towards retaining the employees that we worked so very hard to bring on board. Commissioner Barb Fuller, you have a question?
A comment, if I may. This is an incredibly important addition to our organization. One of the things that we've heard through HR is people want to learn new things and have opportunities within the organization. This will standardize that kind of education or training, however, skill set building, whatever you want to call it. It also emphasizes to our organization how greatly we value them. We want them to be safe. I want everybody to go home at the end of the day with 10 fingers and 10 toes, so to speak. And this is an important way to ensure that we're hearing where we can do better and then strategizing a plan for it without putting the burden on our foreman or our directors to be doing that in addition to everything else we're asking them to do and take responsibility for. So I'm really grateful to Cheryl and her team for bringing this proposal to us and getting it implemented. The apprenticeship program is a very challenging opportunity that we've talked about for a long time. But again, how do we make our organization the place where people want to be and want to work, and then maximize who they are over time. So I'm fully in support of this position being added.
Thank you. Commissioner Yamas, you have your hand raised?
I did. So I did have a couple of questions, and as Barb spoke, we are talking about doing an apprentice program. I think that's important that we do go forward with that, but the safety program, and I wondered, do we have already training that's required by the state for drivers and staff that are on the road, such as MIOSHA training for on the side of the road? I know that there are legal mandates of setting up traffic safety cones. There wouldn't be so much here digging trenches as much as road signs and safety and those sort of things. Are those mandatory at this time? Well, I think this is an excellent idea, because it would streamline all of that.
Exactly. No, it's not mandatory right now, other than what the requirements are for them to obtain and then keep current their CDL. But certainly these are exactly the type of opportunities that we have implemented at time and not necessarily 100% consistently, and we'd like to be able to do that. And we've had some of our folks that we've been able to offer OSHA 10 training. We'd like to be more consistent and have the ability to offer that throughout the workforce. So those are exactly the types of opportunities where, again, I think it's with all good intentions that people have attempted to execute over the years, but this would be able to formalize many of those programs and make sure that we are doing that in a consistent manner, and that that is their job, is to have those types of opportunities availed, and then certifying that people are doing it. And if it's MyOSHA, which is an awesome resource that we can take advantage of, CRASIF, MCRISIP, all the different resources that are out there, or if we need to look at bringing certified trainers in. I know we've worked with Lenawee County in the past where they've had people that have been certified. So certainly any resources that are available to us, we would love to take advantage of those, bring them in, and again, make sure that we've got consistent training. And then we're keeping track of who's been through what, and if they need to be updated or need to go through it again, that we're providing all of that. And again, an apprenticeship program is like a lofty goal to get to, but hopefully this is going to be at least a step in that direction as we're working towards that. Commissioner McCollum, you have your hand up as well.
Yes, I was just going to comment that adding that position, I think would make it more attractive to work for the road commission. So, you know, if we could put that forward as one of the key points of working here, I think that would help draw people in to work for the road commission. So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, thank you. We are happy to market ourselves in any way possible. And I do think hopefully it is, this is a direct reflection of what we've heard from our workforce. So again, looking at, again, the very important resource that we have currently, we need these folks and we want them to stay and we want to invest in them. And so this is another opportunity to do that. But if that's a marketing tool as well, we have no shame. We are more than happy to put that one out there too. So, but again, that I will be proposing that as part in the very near future, that FTE will require board approval. So you will see that in the very near future. All right. If there's no further questions on that, Dan, I'm happy to hand it back over to you.
And obviously then if we add an FTE, we want to make sure we budget for it. It is in the budget. Certainly if the board were to not approve the additional FTE, you know, the fact that it's in the budget, that's conservative, right? We could always adjust it accordingly. But we want to make sure that we at least account for it. And then lastly, inflationary factors are included with all departmental budgets. Holy cow. Lately, some of the inflationary news I've been hearing, I can't believe, you know, some of the cost increases, like if you've gone to the grocery store or, you know, if you filled up on gas. Obviously, you know, we use diesel and unleaded gas, you know, any material cost, you know, health insurance, whatever the case may be. That's something we always look at when we're looking at the new year as far as our budgeting process to make sure that we don't fall short with that. Next page. Of course, we want to make sure that we are meeting our financial obligations for our employees. So we have budgeted both our normal monthly pension costs as well as an extra payment that we make. We've been making an extra payment each year. We've been fortunate enough to be able to do so. You could call it like a 13th month payment, if you will. And again, you know, just looking at our unfunded pension levels, trying to address that. You know, it's you know, not something that we're going to get to 100% funded, you know, in a year or two even, but you know, we are at least trying to make that effort and showing the importance of you know, trying to you know, meet those obligations. And certainly when we submit our report to the state of Michigan as far as unfunded levels, that factors in the fact that we're trying to make that extra payment to address our unfunded levels, which, by the way, I check that every day to see if they've approved our waiver and our plan for our pension. And so far, they have not provided anything formally to us yet. Certainly, when we hear back as far as our waiver being accepted, hopefully, I'll share that with all of you. Coincidentally, I did see a job posting. For whatever reason, from MDOT, I get all these job postings, and they're looking for somebody to work in the Treasurer's Department to handle all the, this public act distribution and working with municipalities and so on. So I think they're shorthanded as well, and so that's kind of factoring into, the not very quick turnaround. Healthcare and OPEB. So obviously, big costs there. We did meet with Brown & Brown, our benefits administrator, and there is a slight increase for our health insurance costs, but not astronomical. So, we were coached early on that if somebody says they'll save you money for healthcare, they're lying to you. What they'll do is they'll take the increase that you expect and maybe flatten the curve a little bit. And certainly I feel like that's what Brown & Brown has done for us to keep it more manageable as far as our health insurance costs. So, we are seeing a bit of an increase, but not significant. We also are contributing an extra OPEB payment. So that's to meet our unfunded liability with regards to retiree health insurance. And as a reminder, the OPEB, the GASB is not a requirement. We're not required to pay this additional amount, but certainly it's something that as a course of doing business, we've been doing and been budgeting for that in order to address the unfunded liability. And certainly that's paying off because I want to say we're over 60% funded, and we've met the obligations from the state of Michigan as far as an acceptable funded level. And also that just demonstrates to those that are receiving retiree health care that it's important to us and we want to meet our financial obligations. And also we are budgeting again about $4 million for capital road equipment. So it's been a great initiative. We've been using installment purchases. We've been using cash, but we, especially with the 4 trucks a year, just to get, to give our employees, the adequate equipment needed to perform their jobs to the best of their ability. And, the last several years, we've been able to budget about $4 million for road equipment, which has been great. Any questions on this slide? Okay, next slide. So we did provide a breakdown of road projects. We are presenting that a little differently than in years past. We would show all the federal aid projects and then the non-federal aid projects. Well, if you recall, we are changing as far as our asset management plan, and the asset management plan is broken down by primary and local. And so we're trying to mirror that a little bit to, make sure that there's a better tie-in with the asset management program and how we're budgeting. And it's kind of the first year doing that. And I think we've got a good process and we'll continue to refine it. So there is a listing in the budget documents of details of the projects that we are performing. But for paved roads, we're spending about $15.8 million, and that's a combination of road commission cost, if there's federal aid dollars, or if there's any contributions from township or others. And again, these are just road projects, so these are the larger projects. There's certainly the routine things that we're doing, of course, every day, but we're just highlighting road projects. Unpaved roads, we're going to spend about $846,000. Bridges and culverts, about $1.5 million, and then traffic and safety, about 4.7. And so certainly, like I said, the board packet lists all the larger projects that we'll be working on, and just want to see if the commissioners have any questions about any particular projects. Okay, if not, we'll go on to the next slide. And like I said, we did provide that in the budget documents. And so if there are ever any questions on why are we doing this project or why isn't this included, certainly staff would be ready to answer that. So Commissioner Barb Fuller.
I'm looking at the slide that's up in front of us at the moment, and traffic and safety at 4.7 million is significantly more, obviously, than what we're planning for unpaved roads, bridges, and culverts. Can you please describe how that works?
And I think, and certainly Matt can step in on this, but so the traffic and safety, there's several of those that we're receiving federal aid funds or contributions from others. And so out of that, looks like the impact, the road commission portion is about 1.4, and the rest is funded by federal aid dollars and township contributions. And my guess is the bridges and culverts might be more on the road commission, but I see Matt has his hand raised. So Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, if you go to sheet or page 25 of the road commission budget for 22, it's actually appendix I. You'll see the projects broken down, and thank you, whoever's driving. You'll have to scroll up a bit. There you go. So there's the traffic and safety projects listed out. So some of the projects include, as you mentioned, the column to the far left, the funding column to the far left is what's being paid for by federal or state funds. And you can see a significant portion of this is federally or state funded. CMAQ are the first two projects listed. We also have some safety projects. These are competitive grants that we apply for and compete statewide for. And we're able to bring that funding back to Washtenaw County. So this congestion mitigation, air quality is typically invested in our signal system to make it operate more efficiently. That way cars are not queuing up at the intersections, waiting where that exhaust is concentrated. So in order to move that traffic along, we're making sure our signals are very active and communicating with one another. So that's where that program is. And then safety projects are individual projects that are, we go after money for based on maybe there's a crash pattern or a series of preventable accidents that we can apply a treatment such as rumble strips on the center line or edge line, enhanced signing, a flashing beacon. Those are the kind of treatments that oftentimes you'll see in safety projects. So that's a list of those projects. We also have some outside revenue. We mentioned some carryover, the traffic signal projects, Lower at Textile, Maple at Textile. We're awaiting steel fabrication. So that's going to carry over. So those were listed in that category. And then one of the Millage projects, Ellsworth at Oak Valley, that's an intersection project where we're building a traffic signal. So that one is listed in there as well. Any other questions on that category specifically?
Matt, if I can just add on the traffic signal projects, the reason why you see those three that Matt just identified as contributions from others is because in this case, all three happen to be in Pittsfield Township, and the township has requested that the traffic signals be mast arm as opposed to a traditional span wire, which is what the road commission would install. And so the township is picking up those additional costs.
Yeah, so for Ellsworth to Oak Valley, the breakdown on that is 200,000 will be millage money, and then I believe 190 is the cost of the steel for the mast arms. Okay. If you have any other questions on the list, feel free to ask away.
Commissioner Bartfuller, does that answer your question? Okay. Yeah, any other questions on this document while it's up? Okay. All right, if we can go back to, we'll go to the next slide. Non-motorized projects, was that Barb that asked? So we've got the countywide improvements of $500,000. Those projects would satisfy our requirement of 1% of Michigan transportation funds. So, you know, we started to formalize that process and include it in the budget and monitor that to make sure that we meet those obligations. And then we have, you know, significant pass-through grants of about 7.2 million. A lot of our border-to-border trails, pathways, and so on. And we would receive, you know, federal aid funds for a portion, and then anything else would be picked up. Just about everything else would be picked up by, you know, county parks, or I want to say Pittsfield Township's also included here. So, any questions on this? Okay, next slide. Local road program, we've kind of talked about this a little bit. We increased the road commission's contribution to 1.5 from 1.3. And then we are also expecting to spend about $1 million on bridges and culverts on the local roads. Any questions on this slide? Okay, oh, Commissioner Barb Fuller.
So just help me remember and understand correctly that the local road matching program now has more flexibility with respect to the township's choices for spending the match, right? It used to be divided into, well, there was the drainage match was separate from the other pot of money, and those have now been combined.
Correct. Yeah, and I think Cheryl used a good word, you know, kind of simplifying it. So.
And I think the townships will appreciate the fact that they're empowered to have more discretion over how the match gets spent. So nice move, nice move.
Yep. So certainly we'll see what sort of impact this makes, and you know, we'll be reporting back. But yeah, it made a lot of sense as we were talking about it, I think so. Any other questions on this slide? Okay, next one. So as I've been talking about, you know, we try and take a balanced approach to the budget. We've got so many competing needs. Obviously, roads, that's why we're here. We want to improve the roads and bridges, and, you know, the CMAQ projects, roundabouts, you know, there's a whole host of things we do from a safety standpoint. We also have a significant amount of road equipment, heavy trucks, graders, so on. And we have facilities that we want to make sure that we keep those going, and safe, of course. And, you know, things happen and need to be repaired, so we want to make sure we're addressing that. You know, we've talked a lot about recruiting and retaining our workforce. So certainly the recruiting side there's been some challenges, but you know, it seems like we are doing, you know, a lot of different things to try to you know, recruit our workforce. And then retaining is a different challenge, but you know, we're always looking at ways to meet the needs of what our employees are asking for. You know, better communication. You know, sometimes are there even little things we can do to make an impact. So, you know, I feel Cheryl does a great job of listening to the organization and trying to, you know, trying new things. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but you've got to try these things in order to, you know, to basically demonstrate to the workforce that we're listening and trying to, you know, make this as good a place as possible to work for. So, and also financial obligations, as we talked about, we've got, you know, pension, health insurance, you know, our installment purchases that we want to make sure we're paying back. You know, we want to make sure we have a healthy fund balance, right, in case emergencies were to arise. So all these things kind of go into the mix, and you know, we come up with what we feel is, you know, a balanced approach that we are addressing needs. Certainly there's more needs than there's funds, but we try to prioritize things. You know, if our situation ends up a little bit better, say in the first quarters, typically when there's a big change, then we're ready to go with some other initiatives, either with projects or equipment, you know, whatever the case may be. But you know, we're always at the ready to be able to add things back in, assuming, you know, our budget situation improves. Any questions on this page? Okay, next one. Factors to monitor. I don't know, is Commissioner Green, is he here? Okay.
Commissioner Green indicated early on that he was going to have to leave for an important phone call, I believe around 10 o'clock, and that he'd come back as soon as he could.
Okay, yep. Well, he had mentioned the Infrastructure Act, and I believe the president just signed that yesterday. So, you know, now it's official. What is the impact on Washtenaw County Road Commission? We have no idea at this point. Certainly, if there's additional funds that come our way, we certainly would make use of that. And we've had some discussions, and I know Matt has some thoughts on it too. And you know, maybe by the first quarter, if we know, then we can you know, try and get some things ready. Or, you know, chances are maybe it would be later quarter of 2022, or maybe even going into 2023. But you know, obviously we can't really include anything in the budget because we don't know necessarily the impact for Washtenaw County. But you know, certainly if there was something to come our way, we would not be surprised. And Matt, I see you have your hand up.
I just wanted to assure the board and those listening in, we're certainly listening in and keeping our feelers out with Watts, SEMCOG, CRA, as people are digesting the new legislation. It is not it's a monumental bill, but it also is more of what we've been doing over the course of my career, where they're reauthorizing the infrastructure, the traditional road and bridge federal funds. So we are planning for the next 4 years through Watts, fiscal year 2023 to 2026. So we're going to be hopefully recipients of additional funds. And so that'll get programmed through a very formalized process. And ultimately, federal funds take a while to program, to plan for, to get all the necessary permits, obligation authority. So all that takes time. It's very, very unlikely that we will see any bump in funding for 2022. The soonest, the absolute soonest, I would think, would be maybe for 2023 funding for the next TIP cycle. So stay tuned. We will definitely update you and provide anything that we receive from others, including SEMCOG, Watts, or CRA.
Commissioner Yamas, you had a question?
I believe Commissioner McCollum had her hand up first. So
Okay, Commissioner McCollum.
Thank you. I heard that the townships could possibly, the money they received from the CARE Acts could contribute to the roads, but it's back and forth. I was wondering if you heard anything about that.
We have not received anything formal with respect to guidance on the townships and their ability to spend their American Recovery Plan Act funds, specifically on road infrastructure. I do know that if there's anything that was, you know, projects that were deferred because of the pandemic, those would potentially be eligible. So certainly, had the townships had intentions to do road work, that may become eligible through that mechanism. And then stormwater is eligible under the American Recovery Plan Acts. So certainly anything that they would want to do with respect to culverts or any form of storm sewer drainage improvements, those should be eligible with those township funds. Again, the Road Commission did not receive any ARPA funds, but we'd be certainly happy to work with townships on spending their ARPA funds.
Thank you.
thank you, Cheryl, for that. I'm so excited about this,
Sure.
and I figured it would take beyond, we wouldn't see the funds, but maybe get an idea of what we might be able to spend. And it's an exciting time to know that our infrastructure is going to be fixed. And I also was wondering about the funds that went to the counties. One of the mandates that we had was to come up with a tree plan because for the environment. But as we all know, we cannot spend our monies on anything but the road. If you've heard anything about how we were mandated to come up with a tree plan and how to maybe replace those. If there's any conversation been with the county about some of their funds being able to fund that mandate. I know that we promised to cut as little as possible because we are also very concerned with the environment and trees and such. However, we're not allowed by law to spend any of our dollars replacing trees. So this may be the right or wrong time to ask, but it definitely has come to my mind. If you've heard anything.
Yeah.
If there's any conversation.
Well, certainly with respect to our tree practices, we continue to take that very seriously. Any of our bigger projects where we're actually doing tree removal, we're trying to limit that tree removal wherever we can, and minimize any impacts that we have. Certain projects, because of the footprint, in order to have that safe road design, we do have to do some tree removal, but we've been honoring that commitment to try to minimize any of the tree removals or tree trimming, and to certainly implement best practices when we're doing either removal or trimming activities. As far as tree replacement, I have not heard of any intention to use those American Recovery Plan Act funds towards tree replacement. So far, my conversations with respect to the county ARPA funds have been with Evan Pratt's office and Water Resources, and have focused primarily on stormwater and the ability to try to manage, especially with respect to any of the climate issues that may be out there, to better manage the stormwater issues that we're having throughout the county. So I see that Commissioner Barb Fuller has her hand up, and then also Commissioner Schenk has turned her video on.
Okay.
I'm happy to defer to the chair.
Well, I was hoping that we were going to, I think in our memorandum, we were going to try and partner, or that was an idea, partner with the Recreation Department who could do that if in some way, to let them know where it had to happen. But I defer to. Thank you very much for that, Cheryl.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to say, I don't know that the ARPA funds can be used for tree planting specifically. And we haven't had conversations, but we could, and I'd love to, if I can be helpful, emphasis that didn't come out right, facilitating conversations around dealing with trees that have to be cut down. I'd be glad to do that. I know the Conservation District often has resources to offer as well, and that could be a place where that fits. I don't know, but I would love to have those conversations and appreciate you thinking about it and trying to figure that out too. Thanks. Oh, one last thing, sorry. We have talked a bit about the culverts. We don't have a plan to fund culverts in the next allocation, which will be coming out at the beginning of next year. But after that allocation, there will still be $35 million to allocate. So I think that's certainly worth continuing to talk about. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Fuller?
So the ARPA dollars were dropped into accounts without any application or justification or explanation of how they might be used. Those dollars, as I understand it, just appeared in the accounts of people who had filed the appropriate paperwork to receive them, and how to spend them was left to their discretion. Do I understand correctly that the infrastructure dollars are expected to be distributed based on a competitive application process as opposed to a lump sum based on some formula that Treasury figures out, to do that directly? Is that what you anticipate?
We have not seen that guidance yet. So part of the infrastructure bill that was just passed has been continuation basically of many of the federal transportation bills that have been out there, the FAST Act dollars. So actually, I think slightly over half is just continuation of that. The new monies, how those would be distributed, we have not yet received guidance on that. If it goes through the traditional formulas and programs and things that have been out there, then we would expect that it would be coming through SEMCOG and Watts in the traditional transportation planning process. But if it becomes that there's competitive grants that are available or direct grants that are available, certainly Matt and his staff are excellent at monitoring all of that. We will be on top of it. And as you know, we are more than happy to submit and apply for any grants that we think would benefit the infrastructure in Washtenaw County. Matt?
Yeah, I just want to add, just keep in mind this federal money is only probably eligible for our federal aid road system. So a vast majority of our local roads would not be eligible for this new revenue. So one of the struggles I think we'll have with the public is that the infrastructure bill has been highly publicized, but yet likely won't go to any local roads that they may live on or drive on a regular basis. And the challenge for us will be to explain that and message it.
And we already tried that or started that conversation with Lima Township last week. Again, people hear $1.2 trillion. That's a huge number that is out there. But again, when you start talking about the fact that a large portion of it is continuation of federal programs that are already in existence. And then as Matt said, if we start looking at historically where those funds have gone and they go on to the federal aid system, which for us pretty much mimics the primary road system, that is, you know, a small portion of our roadway, or our road system. We still have 1,000 miles of local roads that are likely to not be eligible for any of these funds. And then we also have Public Act, PA 51 that is going to restrict our ability to invest on the local road system. So those local roads continue to be a challenge, and we continue to need those township partners in order to be successful on that very important 1,000+ miles of roadway that we have. Commissioner Green, you have your hand up?
Yes, and so I suspect that we'll continue to need the millage, the Washtenaw County millage program that we have to fix local roads here in Washtenaw County, even with this Infrastructure Act.
Correct. I mean, to date, we've primarily used the local road or the county road millage for the primary road system. And we'll monitor that and to ensure that we are meeting our asset management goals. And we will certainly leverage all dollars that we can, whether they be millage dollars, whether they be federal aid dollars, whether they be MTF dollars, to meet those asset management goals, because that primary road system is still the backbone of the county road system with the most traffic, the commercial vehicles that are necessary to, to sustain Washtenaw County. But if we can get to the point where we can start looking at the local road system, that would be an awesome position to be in, because that means our primary road system is in pretty good shape. We're committed to trying to get those dollars where we can so that they are being best utilized for as many people as possible within Washtenaw County. Lots of questions and not nearly as many answers.
Yeah, and I would just add, keep in mind our asset management plan that was recently adopted identified just on the primary road system, I believe the number was close to $20 million in paving needs, another $20 million in bridges and culverts. So we're talking millions in the hole as far as needs out there. So, and that's just the primary system. So even though we may see additional federal funds, it's just not going to fix all of that, what's out there. It's a tough message when the general public hears trillions.
Yeah, but Matt, you just got 1.2 trillion. All right. Dan, did we muddy the water enough for you?
I'm not sure where we're at. No, I'm kidding. I believe we were on the
Bullet
first
one.
bullet point here, the Infrastructure Act. No, good conversation. Are there any other questions on that? Okay, so another factor for 2022 is our ongoing labor negotiations. I believe both management and the union had their initial meeting. The contract expires on December 17th. Just a reminder, there are 74 employees that are represented by the Technical, Professional, and Office Workers Association of Michigan, or TPOM. And certainly whatever the result of the labor negotiations will have a significant impact on the budget in 2022 and the out years as well. So certainly that's something that we're monitoring very closely. So I'm sure we're all sick and tired of talking about the pandemic, but I do feel the need to mention that because I'm not sure when it started or if it's ended or when it will end, but you know, it is something that can impact a lot of things. So, you know, we're obviously aware of it, what's going on with that, and we'll adjust accordingly. Supply chain, Commissioner Barb Fuller.
Yes, thank you, Dan. In terms of the pandemic, Cheryl had announced last week in her weekly update that we have now 19 confirmed COVID positives. I believe I have the number right in our organization. And I'm wondering if is there any new news on the vaccine mandate by the feds? I know it was tied up in the courts. I just wondered if there was any new news that might help us contain those positive cases that just seem to keep coming.
No, I mean, obviously we continue to send out that information. That most recent notice was yesterday that we received notification that another employee had tested positive. We've been following all appropriate protocols. Thankfully, our staff does seem to be taking this very seriously. So we have had limited instances of people having to be off because of close contact. We encourage the vaccination. At this point, we do not mandate the vaccination. The most recent communication that we received from McChrysip is that, as you indicated, Commissioner Fuller, this is currently tied up in the courts. And so we are waiting to see where the OSHA mandate is going to go. That's at the federal level. In the state of Michigan, we do have MyOSHA. So all indications that we've heard, at least, are that MyOSHA will mimic the federal OSHA standard that was issued. But again, it's all tied up in the courts. And until we have further guidance, staff will not be yet asking the board to take action. Ultimately, it is the federal standard, which we believe will also be the MyOSHA standard, would be that the board would need to pass a vaccination policy. But until we have that guidance, we will not be coming before this board for formal action. Are there any questions on that? All right, Dan, back to you.
So another factor, and I've never seen the issues with the supply chain that we've been having lately. I'm sure you've all have heard about that. And, you know, the organization does a great job planning ahead. Jim does a great job making sure that we have our full supply of salt. So this was several years ago when there were issues with salt. The winter was particularly bad, and you know, they're running out of salt, and we really never had that worry. You know, part of it is the My Deal, and part of it is the excellent planning that Jim and the operations department do. But, you know, I guess stay tuned, and as good a job as we do with planning, it's required even more planning. I know the road equipment that we're budgeting for, you know, Jim has to get way ahead of that, maybe even further now, to make sure that we receive things in a fairly timely manner. But, you know, part of it is we're kind of at the mercy of the issues that are involved. So like I said, if anything, it could require even more planning on our part, or, you know, I mentioned that we have inflationary cost, and that's been something that the supply chain challenges have also been driving prices up too. So, you know, hopefully we've captured everything as best we can. If those challenges continue, then maybe we have to reevaluate again. Mother Nature, so that's always very intimidating for me. I feel like I'm budgeting against Mother Nature, and at some point I'm going to lose, and we probably have lost in the past. But again, when conservatively, we try to budget for closer to a worst case scenario for winter and then adjust accordingly, and we'll continue to do that. I've heard several credible sources talking about predicting winter, and I've heard anything from cold and dry to mild and wet. So, take your pick, I guess. Was kind of joking with our new hires that a nice job would be a meteorologist, because, they probably get it wrong more than they get it right. So, kind of an interesting job to have that, I got it wrong, and, try the best I can or flip a coin. I'm not sure what they do, but anyway. And then also another important factor is our actual audited numbers from 2021. Again, I'm fairly confident that our numbers will come in better than our budget by design. And when that does in the first quarter, we look at that, we look at how we came out of winter, and then hopefully we can make some positive adjustments as far as maybe adding some other things to the budget. But, we don't know. Again, winter could be horrific in December. We don't know. We don't have that crystal ball. So, but these are all factors, and there are more, but some of the main factors we're monitoring for 2022. Cheryl?
Dan, real quick, I just going back to the pandemic, want to have one point of clarification, and that is the COVID positive notification that I sent out yesterday was for one person. As Commissioner Fuller indicated, we have had, this would be number 19, but that is throughout the duration of the pandemic. I know there's been a lot on the news lately with respect to outbreaks and whatnot. We've been fortunate enough to not have there be outbreaks amongst our organization. They've really been individual isolated cases. So while it's unfortunate that we've had 19 people test positive, that has been one at a time, and that we are not suffering from an outbreak organization wide with 19 people. So I just wanted to clarify as we start putting numbers out there. Thank you, Dan.
Commissioner Barb Fuller?
I'd also like to note that some of those cases may be breakthrough cases. So it isn't strictly a reluctance to be vaccinated that's resulting in some of these COVID positives, despite some people's best efforts. There are breakthrough cases. And of course, because of privacy considerations, we have no idea how that, who's in what column. But I just want to make sure that people understand that, it does happen. People do everything they can to be vaccinated and boosted, and sometimes it still gets them. So while I'm disappointed in the number to keep ticking up, I don't want to vilify those folks. And of course, none of us know the names of the individuals who have tested positive. Folks in the organization may know, but that is never anything that's disclosed publicly. And I want to make sure people understand that the confidentiality considerations are being observed very diligently.
Absolutely. We take that very seriously. We're trying to balance the notification so that people who are concerned about potential exposure are aware of the situation, but we absolutely protect the privacy of those who have actually tested positive.
Any other questions on this slide? Okay, we'll move on to the next one. So what are the next steps? So technically, we are not allowed to open our doors for the new year until we have a board approved budget. And also the initial budget requires a public hearing. So we're proposing the hearing date to be December 7th, which is during the board meeting. I believe it's at the beginning of the meeting. We open the public hearing. The public's allowed to speak, and then any commissioners as well. And at that point, just because we're going over the budget with the board now, things could change between now and December 7th. So if anything were to change significantly that would require us to update the budget either for 21 or 22, we would communicate that prior. So we would make sure the board has a good understanding of what has changed and why. And certainly during the hearing, we can discuss it at that point. But you know, things do happen. I always tell staff I don't like surprises, and so if there's anything that maybe we hadn't thought about or something that surprised us, certainly we want to make sure that we can have the opportunity to adjust our budget before December 7th when we ask the board to approve it. So Commissioner Barb-Fuller?
It would be my intention that the public hearing would occur early on the December 7th agenda and likely then roll into approval at the same meeting, unless there's some unforeseen dramatic event that throws everything out of whack. I'm just not comfortable waiting until our meeting on December 21st to do that budget approval, because we never know what Mother Nature has in mind for us. So
Right.
I want everyone to be prepared that on December 7th, yes, there will be a public hearing. Make sure if you have any questions, you contact Cheryl and Dan to get them resolved in advance of that board meeting. But that will have the public hearing. Typically it gavelled open, a few comments, often not many, gavelled closed, and then as an agenda item, we would move to approve the 2022 budget. Just giving everybody a heads up.
And Commissioner Barb-Fuller, that's been our past practice. I think it works well to have it at the first board meeting in December. That does give us the potential, if there are issues, to have it approved at the second one. But you know, we don't necessarily want to wait for that last board meeting of the year. And just a point of clarification, there would actually be two budgets to approve, the year-end 2021 as well as 22. But the public hearing is related to the 22 initial budget. Any other questions on the next steps? Okay, next slide. Are there any other questions on either 2021 or 2022? Anything we've talked about? Anything we can go over in more detail? Well, if not, again, I appreciate all the collaborative efforts with the leadership team, and you know, everything that Emily's done to make this a more, I hate using the term, but user-friendly document for, you know, that's readable and easy to understand, has a lot of great information in there. Commissioners, I appreciate all your thoughtful questions, and it's, you know, if there were no questions, then I would feel like maybe we're not doing our job, because this should hopefully generate questions. So I appreciate all your great questions. And, you know, just because we talked about it today, if you think of other questions, feel free to reach out to staff. We'll be more than happy to help you with that. And like I said, we'll continue to monitor this, and we'll be ready for December 7th. And that's all I have, unless there's anything else. Great, thank you.
All right, so I'm just going to blow right on through, because we're pushing up here on 11 o'clock, and perhaps we can adjourn somewhat early and give people a little more breathing room for lunch and whatever you need to do between now and our 1 o'clock meeting. The next item is the draft calendar for the board meetings and working sessions. The board meetings are the typical first and third Tuesdays of the month, working sessions typically being our second meeting of the month. The schedule of working sessions was presented to us separately. Thank you very much, listing topics for discussion for those meetings. As you notice, there are 3 with topics to be determined. So again, if any of you have had thoughts about what you'd like to see covered in a working session, it doesn't mean they can't double bunk on any of the other ones. Often we have a little extra time, but clearly we want these working sessions to be of value to all of us. So as you have thoughts, please share them. And then of course the chat schedule with the usual rotation has been presented as well. Cheryl, do you have anything you want to add here?
No, you've basically said everything that I was going to say. We're not terribly creative when it comes to the board meeting schedule, nor the chat. The chat's alphabetical. So that's as much creativity as you've seen. If you've got ideas on working sessions, to your point, budget typically tends to be as today, like today, where it's a little bit of a bigger subject, but many of the others we can double up if we have that many different topics that we want to cover. I will just add on to what Commissioner Schenk had indicated. I did actually speak with her yesterday. We do continue to monitor the Open Meetings Act. As it exists today, we will not have the opportunity to have a remote meeting or even a hybrid meeting as of January 1st. So staff is preparing to have in-person board meetings as of January 1st. We are continuing to do the upgrades to the boardroom because as we are collecting information about what the actual interpretation of the Open Meetings Act is, if it is at all possible, we would like to continue to have remote participation, at least at a minimum, from the public. And so if there's the ability to continue to allow that in addition to in-person public participation, we think that that's been a huge benefit over the last almost 2 years that we've been conducting these meetings. So we would like to have those technology upgrades in our boardroom to be able to continue that process. So we'd like to set us up for the future like that. Although right now under the Open Meetings Act, that's the one piece we're trying to determine whether that is even a possibility. We're getting sort of conflicting information on the public participation part of it. It appears that the commissioners will be required to be in person as of January. Okay, I see a couple of hands. Commissioner McCollum, I think you had your hand up first.
I was just going to ask, I know we were going to have a schedule of rotation of 2 commissioners could be remote. Did I miss that? Has that been presented yet?
I did not prepare that because it is our interpretation, and right now we've asked for assistance from our legal counsel. It does not appear that will be permissible under the Open Meetings Act.
Okay.
That the amendments that took place late last year, actually after we had amended our bylaws, even though our bylaws allow for it, the Open Meetings Act does not currently allow for remote participation by commissioners unless you are on active military duty. So that would be the only exception starting January 1st. So I did not prepare that schedule because it does not look like that will be an option. Should that become available, I am happy to prepare that schedule.
Thank you.
Commissioner Green?
Just wondering, with the recent spike in the cases, is there still an opportunity that the Open Meetings Act might be amended for an extension to allow a hybrid meeting? Does that possibility at least exist between now and January 1st?
Yeah, as the Open Meetings Act is written today, that possibility does not exist. The Open Meetings Act allows for remote participation through December 31st of this year due to a state or locally declared state of emergency. So our county has declared a state of emergency through the end of this year, which is what is allowing this body to meet remotely through the end of this year. As of December 31st, that option expires, and the only permissible participation on behalf of commissioners or members of the body are if you're on active military duty. That's as Open Meetings Act is currently written. There is a Senate bill out there right now that would extend the ability to meet remotely, basically as described right now, through, I believe it's March 31st of 2022. So that would give us 3 more months of being able to meet remotely as we are right now for this intended purpose, basically being that there be some form of a state of emergency. But that's just a Senate bill that has not been, I don't believe that has moved any further. I haven't seen any action on that.
Thank you.
Cheryl, do we know if CRA is actively lobbying to have some kind of an extension or accommodation to have a hybrid meeting, which would allow us to utilize the bylaws that we adopted pre-pandemic? And I would
I
hope that
have-
MTA would be lobbying similarly. I don't imagine the Board of Commissioners is any more eager to meet in person than some of us are.
I can contact CRA. I have not spoken with them on this particular topic. I have spoken with McChrysip. They have at least touched base with their lobbyists, and they are under the impression that there's not a lot of interest on behalf of the Michigan legislature to make any further changes to the Open Meetings Act at this time. At least that's what they have been told. And I'm not convinced, based on what I heard, that all counties feel similarly to Washtenaw County and want to see further amendments to the Open Meetings Act. So I don't know that there'll be a lot of push, but I can certainly follow up from CRA. I'm not sure some of our brothers and sisters out there from a fellow county road commissions have the same desire that we do.
I would also be interested to know what the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners, and Caroline, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I know Cheryl is in communication regularly with the county administrator. I don't know the ins and outs of declaring a state of emergency, what that involves or requires. But if they have any plans going forward, just so we can be proactive. Anything else from anyone? Go ahead, Cheryl.
Commissioner Fuller, if I may, I did have the opportunity just to speak. I had a meeting on a different topic with Commissioner Schenk and Administrator Dill yesterday. And my understanding is that the county board is also preparing to meet in person starting in January, again, based on the current Open Meetings Act. While they have appreciated and support meeting remotely, that their understanding is, as it stands today, they too will be meeting in person as of the beginning of January.
Okay, so I guess we all need to plan to do that. And if it changes, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Otherwise, begin planning to come in and enjoy the new chairs that are in the boardroom as of today.
Commissioner Fuller, it looks like Commissioner Sanders may have unmuted herself.
Oh, Commissioner Sanders. Thank you, Cheryl.
I don't have anything to add. I just unmuted. My 2 cents would be I love remote, but I will. I actually think that remote allows more people to participate than in person.
Agreed. Agreed.
But
And I'm sorry.
I'll have to go along with whatever guidelines there are.
And it's my impression so far that it's the elected or appointed board members that will be required to meet in person, that there will probably still be public participation allowed remotely, but that this board and your board may have to be in chairs in the room together beginning the first of the year.
Right in the midst of winter.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, exactly. And here at the Road Commission, we are doing everything we can to be prepared for whatever eventuality comes our way. So we've got the technology in motion, supply chain challenges with all of that. But we're doing our best to be ready for whatever the landscape looks like after the first of the year.
I would just like to add that earlier you talked about the possibility of adding a position that would basically manage your safety concerns. And as someone that spent almost 10 years working for Leaseway Transportation, I'm glad to know that you are looking to create something like that, because it's really important that you have someone that is their sole focus for the employees, but also for the residents and for liability issues. So I just wanted to applaud you for that.
Thank you. Anything else? Did you folks have any comments on the schedules? Everything looks fine. Nothing jumps out at you like, oh my word, we can't have a meeting on that day because it's Rod's birthday or something. In which case we'll have cake. Okay. We have a thumbs up from Joanne. Thank you. Okay. Oh, and from Gloria. Oh, now we've got a competition going here. All right. If there's nothing else that anyone wants to add in, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, I motion that we adjourn the meeting.
I support.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Hello?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, commissioners, we need to do a roll call vote.
Yeah, I'll learn this and then it will not be required any longer. So, Aaron,
Commissioner Joanne McCullum,
Yes.
Commissioner Rod Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Doug Fuller,
Aye.
Commissioner Gloria Yanis,
Yes.
and Commissioner Barb Fuller.
yes, we are adjourned. See everybody at 1 o'clock. Take care. Bye.